I was 16 when my life split into two. Everything before that day and everything after. Most people would assume that that day was the day my dad died, but it wasn't. It was the day my aunt come running upstairs screaming at me and my brother, telling us that we were going to destroy our mom. And right then, we looked at each other and said, screw it. And we moved back into our flooded, destroyed home with no water, no electric, and put everything back together ourselves while our dad was in the hospital fighting cancer. Let's rewind this just a little bit so I can explain to you how we got here. Originally, when I was going to do this video and talk about this is, I thought the day that changed my life the most, or, you know, things kind of fell apart, was when my dad had passed away. And as I thought about this, come to realize there's a little bit more to it, and it wasn't just that day. It was basically a day that happened previous, a little bit before my dad actually passed away. See, back in 1993, my dad was struggling with cancer. Him and my mom had kind of been on the outs before. There's some stories about that beforehand. And my brother, he's off to college. I'm still in high school. And then in 1993, we had this big flood come down here through Baxter, and really the neighborhood I live in. This house right here is the house I grew up in, and you know, it took out a lot of the homes in this neighborhood and actually kind of flooded this house out as well. And during that time, and when that flood came in, Dad wasn't doing good, so he was back in the hospital again, right? So his whole fight with cancer, he was, you know, he's in and out of the hospital, you know, as he feels good and then doesn't feel good. It's kind of the way that fight goes with a lot of people. But anyway, Dad, he's in the hospital. The flood had come. The house, our house, when the flood hit, we had moved things up and kind of out of our basement. The basement's finished, and moved everything in the top side of the house as water was coming in, and we left the house. Basically kind of abandoned it, and we're at my grandmother's house, which is 4 or 5 blocks on the other side of town there, and we were kind of shacking up in that place while all this had gone on. And it had been, I don't know, it'd been a couple of weeks or so since the flood had actually came and gone through, and no one had come back to the house here to try to, you know, get it back up and going. Mom at that point in time, she wasn't super stable, we'll say, and there's a whole other story behind that one. But Dad wanted to come home. They were going to let him back out of the hospital again. Dad didn't want to die in the hospital, and he wanted to come home. So one day we were at Grandma's house. My brother was home. He'd come home from school, you know, during this point in time with the flood to help out, because I really think that was during the summertime, maybe right before school started back up. I don't remember, but I do remember my mom had told my aunt some kind of story that we had been mean to her. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a fabricated story. It wasn't the truth, and I think it had to do with I really think it had to do with living arrangements, because his dad was, you know, passing away and knew he was going to pass away. My mom had problems with, you know, spending money. She wasn't good with money at all, and he had put everything in our names so that we wouldn't lose property, or we wouldn't, you know, the house wouldn't go away. And Dad had also made us promise that we wouldn't kick Mom out, that she would have a place to live, because as it had gone, you know, Mom and Dad had been separated here for a bit, and then Dad didn't want her not to have a place, and so we promised our dad that wouldn't happen, that she would always have a place here if she wanted it. I think maybe it was along those lines that she had said we were going to kick him out. I can't remember. There was some kind of stress, or, you know, something had happened. And anyway, my brother and I were upstairs in my grandma's house in this little room, just trying to survive and figure out what we were going to do. And my aunt comes up and she just tears into us, like out of nowhere. She just tears into my brother and I. telling us that we're going to cause her to have another mental breakdown, just all these different things. She's mad, she's livid, you know, and she just rips into us and she leaves and goes back downstairs. And man, I remember looking at my brother looks at me, and we both look at each other and we're like, you know, we're done. Screw this, we're out of here. You know, and if you think about it, I'm 16, my brother's 4 years older than me, so he's 20, you know, 19, 20 years old in there. And we grab a few things of clothes that we have right there at my aunt's house, my grandma's house there, and we take off and we come back home. We come back to this house and no electricity, no running water, no anything. Everything's shut down. Everything's all the stuff that was downstairs in this basement now is all upstairs in the house. You can't even walk in the house. We literally had to crawl over stuff and dig our way to a bedroom and then collapse down on the bed. And we slept there that night on just this bed, you know. I mean, you couldn't even walk to the house. Yeah, it was school time because I left. The next day I had school or whatever, and I went ahead and gone to school. And my brother stayed home to call Empire, get electric hooked back up to the house, get some things turned back on so we could start cleaning it up. You know, that was, we wanted to get it cleaned up so Dad could come back home. That's where he wanted to be. And I thought about this story, and I thought it was really the day that Dad passed, but the day that really changed everything and made everything be different was that day my aunt came upstairs and ripped into us. Because it was that day when both of us, we look at each other and we're like, we've had enough. It was that day that I realized that, you know, the only way this house was going to get back functional so Dad could even be home or anything like that all depended on my brother and me. If we didn't do it, no one else was going to do it. There was no one that was coming to help. Mom wasn't mentally fit to do anything like that, to take care of stuff, so the only way it was going to happen was us. So yeah, I went to school that next day, got back home. Lessa got electricity turned on, that type of stuff. We started going through things, throwing stuff away. The basement was a wreck. We go downstairs and start tearing walls down. We had to bleach clean everything because it was nasty floodwaters, all this different stuff, so we could get it cleaned up and get this house back together again so that Dad could come home from the hospital and spend his remaining days here at the house instead of at the hospital. So we got it together. We've cleaned the house. We put stuff up. We threw things away. And we got it all situated back to where Dad was able to come back home. So Dad come back home. He's home. I'm in school. Mom's kind of in and out, you know. She's hanging around the house to help take care of Dad, situations like that. And during that point in time, Les is back at school. Mom's not really living at the house. She's still staying at Grandma's house, but she's coming over to check on Dad and kind of take care of him. It was still kind of an awkward situation. You know, life's strange like that, right? But when I was at school during that point in time, I avoided every day coming home. Uh, I mean, it was tough. My dad was always a, bigger dude. Did everything for himself. And then all of a sudden he's like 115 pounds, 120 pounds, can't move himself in his bed. That's a tough thing to watch. I've been watching it for quite a few months as he went downhill, fighting cancer. You just get to this point, you don't want to really see it anymore. So after school, I would avoid that situation. But then there was one day, for whatever reason, as soon as school was over, I came home. I was like, just felt like I needed to come home. It was pretty crazy. Come home, my mom's in the kitchen doing something. One of the neighbors is over kind of helping her, and I go in to see my dad, and he's just laying there sleeping. I let him know I was there. Anyway, I got home and went to the room, and I let him know I was there, and it was kind of like he was just waiting, because shortly after that he took his last breath right there. I remember walking out and telling my mom, that dad had passed away. And they were like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure." Walked on out of the house. It didn't affect me that much that day, or at least I didn't think it really did. I didn't think it'd be this hard to record this video, to be quite honest with you. It's been years now. I mean, I'm almost 50 years old. But I wasn't overly sad. I'd watched Dad fight cancer and go downhill, and it was just one of those things you're kind of almost ready for it. So it wasn't a big shock to the system. It was something we've been waiting on, and I was actually kind of happy that it had transpired, so he was no longer suffering through everything he was suffering through. But walking out that day, you knew life was never going to be the same. My mom didn't function like a real mother anymore, and I knew it was going to be up to my brother and I to figure things out and get through life and still get things done. Yeah, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got different issues. Some people have harder time in life, and this one was just one of those times, right? We had to grow up fast. I had to grow up fast. My brother was in college, and I still had to finish out high school. Mom wound up not living with us. She stayed with Grandma. That was a whole other story. There was a while there where the whole town thought that the Olson boys were just a couple big pieces of shit that kicked their mom out of the house, so they could run and be wild, which really wasn't the story, and it wasn't what happened, but it's what we lived with, right, for years. Eventually, my aunt came around, started asking my brother and I different questions about all that time and everything that had transpired, and she had realized that when she talked to us, she never talked to us at the same time, but we both had the exact same story, told her the exact same things, and realized that we weren't lying to her, that Mom kind of made up things as a feel sorry for me type deal. Now, don't get things wrong. I still love my mom. She's still, she's still here in town. It's just a different situation. She's kind of the crazy grandma anymore or whatever. We haven't disowned her. I don't disown her, but it's just not the same as it was years ago. But yeah, it was wild. 16 years old, everything kind of falls apart. Family kind of disowns you a little bit, and you realize that if anything's going to happen, it's going to be up to you and your brother. Go to school, pay bills, make sure you finish school, all that good stuff. You never really know what life's going to throw at you. You just got to take the hand you're dealt and do the best you can with it.